with that said, we're at 7 o'clock, which is when we start. We were just doing our social, which we do for the first 15 minutes of the event. And now I want to introduce Lubna, who's my fireside chat guest. And I'm actually going to let Lubna introduce herself because she will do a much better job of it than I will.
No,
Um, if you don't mind, Lubna.
no, I mind, I mind.
Oh, come on. You don't have to be humble. I'm asking you to introduce yourself, and I
Oh,
should have put
I,
together an introduction, but I didn't. So
that's all right. I'm Lubna Johnny. I'm a big fan of Garrett's, and my background's in systems analysis and design and interactive telecommunications. And I guess for the majority of my career, people thought I was lacking focus and all over the place because I had a systemic view of things. I didn't stick in um, to a particular, heads down, uh, do the job. My interest was always in innovation and the impact of technology on human evolution. So my work in hindsight looked if there was a focus area, it was on bringing digital innovations to market and on the bringing together of the different industries that had to come together from telecom to media to internet companies for the digital realm to exist as it is. So I've worked on things from SMS interoperability to common shortcode to downloadable content, location-based services, and billing, roaming, charging, interoperability, all that good jazz that had to happen for us to have this illustrious digital space. My hope was that it would help us to connect one-on-one and liberate us instead of the alternative, which would have been more what looks like reality today, somewhat of a noose. I was invited to write a paper on the role of the enterprise in future cities back in 2013. And that's where the alternate was born because I was sick of us talking about SMS and MMS and 3G and this G and that G and then IoT. And I said that what matters is when all people, places, and environments are connected, aware, and addressable, and ask people what role do you want to play in your life when your data is going to become as important as the air you breathe, practically. And so here we are today. I work a lot on AI ethics. I am published on human machine teaming and human rights in the context of a blended society. I'm an invited W3C expert in privacy, digital identity, and such things. Blah, 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 blah. And I think it's important that we shift from competing against each other to competing to complete each other to a shared outcome. So I'm delighted to be here with you all, and I hope you. I don't know if any of you saw the video of the robot playing tennis against the two people where it kicked their butt, obviously.
did not see that one, but it's not a surprise. Um, so thanks for introducing yourself, Lubna. I'll introduce myself since I asked other people to introduce themselves as well. So my name is Garrett Lang. I'm a software developer turned award-winning software inventor. I'm in North Jersey. I'm now a serial entrepreneur as of 7 years ago. Well, really serial entrepreneur as of 1 or 2 years ago. And my hobby is writing and discussing practical philosophy, which led me to start and be the executive director of the Free Thinker Institute, which is the group that brings you tonight's event. The FTI is a not-for-profit looking to support and empower members to help make sure that everybody is our most polite self, to be the best version of ourselves, to seek truth and to be fair. Seek truth rather than seek to be right. There's a big difference. And we do that through transformational personal and professional development. We have free events like this one on Tuesday evenings, covering a wide range of topics not typically covered in academia or industry. And we have weekly members only events where you apply to be a member, and we apply practical wisdom into our daily lives. It's kind of a peer coaching, mentoring circle and a new friend circle to invite into your life. And we have in-person events in North Jersey and New York City. I will put my email in the chat if anyone is in North Jersey or New York City and wants to join um, for our in-person events. We have only one rule, and I'm going to ask everyone to follow it tonight, like I do every time we meet. That is to be polite. You can say anything you want, no matter how distasteful, as long as it's said politely. And we have had people say very distasteful things and we don't kick them out. We've also had people be really rude even after being warned and they do get kicked out. So we're very consistent. And what that does is it keeps us in the logical part of the brain by not being rude. We keep in that critical thinking part of our brain that does the best thinking, where human beings that are at our highest. And we don't get what typical news sessions do, which is the emotional hijacking. And a lot of politicians these days love the emotional hijacking too. And that stops us from thinking critically and gets us into a reactive mode. And that's not where human beings are at our best. So we want to keep us all in the critical thinking part of our brains. That's what we do in the FTI, because the third intention is about honing our critical thinking skills so we can rely on them, and rely on ourselves and our own critical thinking first and foremost. So that said, I will put a link about the FTI in the chat. Um, if anyone wants to learn more about us, there's all more than you probably want to know, but you can kind of pick and choose what you want to listen to. Steve, I'm going to put you on mute because you had some background noise. And I want to do, in order to introduce today's session, I want to kind of talk about a little bit of history because I think it's helpful to talk about when we talk about the power of words and the human machine future and the age of human machine futures. I think it's good to be grounded in history. We often do that in FTI sessions. And if you don't mind, Lubna, I want to do a quick overview of the way that communication has worked since human beings came to be all the way up until the modern age and sort of show the time span of each of the ages of communication because I think it's pretty telling. Is that okay with you? All right, so let me pull this up. I did a quick chat GPT because I do love AI, and I find it super useful. And so I asked for a timeline of communication technologies. Starts in cave paintings from 30,000 years ago to about 3,000 years ago, where people did cave paintings on walls and ceilings, etc. Now, then it moved on to oral traditions, starting from about 15,000 years ago to 3,000 years. And that's where language and speech sort of translated to culture, myth, and knowledge translation from one person's memory to the next, generation to generation. The written record starts about 3000 BC, and that lasted for about 4,400 years. The first era was 27,000 years, then 12,000 years. We're going to get a summary of all this at the end. So you'll see the timeline accelerating and accelerating. So then we get to the manuscript and messenger era, where hand copied manuscripts by scribes went from 500, 500 CE Common Era, to 1400 Common Era. And then we get the printing press invented. Gutenberg's movable type was the first printing press around 1440. And for 360 years, books, pamphlets, and newspapers became affordable. And it wasn't just the wealthy elites that had access to written records. Back before that, there wasn't as much literacy either. The people that had access to written records were really the wealthy. Then becomes the mass communication era where you have the telegraph, which translated into the telephone, into radio, and into TV from the 1830 time period up until the 1990s. I mean, we obviously still have those things, but then we move on from the age of mass communication, where it's basically one directional, where you have like a source, which is usually an authoritative source, communicating out to a large audience. Then we get to the digital and internet era, where you have email, websites, search engines connecting the world and connecting everyone to each other. But even then, websites weren't built by everybody in that era. So there was still more or less a lot of the remnants of, everyone could email with each other, which was new. But the mass communication was generally still one directional up until the social media era, which started in around 2005. Um, and then you have two-way communication at scale, user-generated content, virality, influencer culture, all these things that have shaped the modern world and made people communicate more often via text and actually the communicating more often via text started in the digital and internet era. But in the social media era, you no longer had authorities being the only ones that could communicate to millions of people. You had any Joe that could write something that resonated with a lot of people, being able to communicate to millions or tens of millions of people, which really reshaped the way communication happens. And then you have AI mediated communication, which is what I would say is what's coming next, where AI is kind of an active participant in communication. And with that said, I'm curious. Let me also show the timeline, right? So we had the first one, 27,000 years long, 12,000 years long, 4,400 years long, 900, 360, 160, 15, 20, and now we're entering the era of AI. And so the one thing you'll notice is these spans are getting shorter and shorter. These two are even questionable whether or not that's exactly the right way to cut it off. Um, our method of communicating, and I like to joke that text is the worst way to communicate. Pretty much every other way of communicating is better than text, and yet mo most people are communicating more often in text than not. And maybe I'll start off with that, Lubna, to get your feedback on sort of what I just went through and the fact that I think that text is the worst way to communicate, and that whenever there's tension in text, we should really quickly jump on a phone or better yet, a Zoom where you have face-to-face and nonverbal communication, because I think so much is lost in text that, we really can't replace. And studies say that 80% of communication is nonverbal. So I feel like we're missing out when we communicate only through text.
Uh, I um I, I can't disagree with you. It drives me crazy sometimes it, that even when you say to someone, "Call me," they'll text you.
Yeah. Or
If
they'll say, text me before you call me. That drives me nuts too. That's how old I am, that I think you should just be able to pick up the phone and call someone.
like I say, like good old fashioned way, POTS. Um, POTS stands for plain old telephone system, by the way.
Got it.
It was the wireline days. But yeah, I think, I mean, while text is nice, and when it, it's especially at the size of a tweet or an SMS, it helps you reduce sometimes of all the blah blah. I think I prefer text over these very long-winded voice messages that people leave sometimes. Um, uh, but I totally agree with you. I think sometimes especially when it becomes a conversation back and forth, and so much gets lost sometimes in translation or in how somebody interprets something. Because life is a matter of perception and response to any set of circumstance, and it's amazing how easily we can get lost in translation or in good old text.
Yeah, I agree completely. And by the
So
way, Kyle had a really good question, which is practicing compassionate epistemology important with AI? I don't know if you've read about this, Lubna, but there was actually a study of AI models and the fact that AI models get brain rot in the same way that human beings do. And if you feed AI a bunch of like antagonistic garbage, it actually stops being able to reason as effectively, which I found fascinating. I'll put the Wired article in the chat, um, just to have something for people to look at that makes it, we like the AI models are based on the same technology that our brains are based on neurotransmitters. So it's really shouldn't be too much of a surprise, if you feed a bunch of garbage in, the saying garbage in, garbage out. And
it really
it
is.
was true with AI.
And much of it is statistical, and it just is guessing the next best word. So I call it food poisoning lately, because when people don't realize how much, depending on what we're feeding it, and it's feasting on everything that's out there. So whether it's real or it's fake, it's meaningful or if it's garbage, it doesn't know. And even if it's accurate, it also doesn't know if what it's learning or what it's observing uh, is ethical or makes sense, or if is it just a byproduct of how awful we have become. It's clueless. And when we combine that with I don't know if somebody was trying to say something. Okay, so when we combine that with whether it's synthetic data that isn't accurate or what have you, or even if it's accurate, as I was just saying, the truth of our reality today is not very pleasant, and it isn't teaching it anything good. And actually, I don't know because we've done a lot of work on empathic AI. I don't know if you noticed, but AI tries to be very compassionate. It's even a lot of people think that it's more compassionate than their doctors when they talk to it. It took AI for me to be called a prescient futurist from a flake, but but it could totally hallucinate, and it goes out of its way to make you feel better. So if you really want to know what it really thinks of you, ask it to be critical.
Yeah, and I would say like while most AI companies, I mean, I think there's a commonality between what's socially accepted and what AI is trained on. But there was an example where Grok, for example, which is owned by Elon Musk, who's more conservative, they trained Grok for a couple weeks or a couple months on their user-generated content, and it started spouting Nazi propaganda and saying how we have to get rid of the Jews and all this stuff. So, and there was actually an example of one of Google's AIs that became very racist for a period of time. And so there are examples where when the AI is not trained well, it starts to exhibit some of the lower, what I would argue, mentalities of human beings. And so really I think there's a very important aspect of who controls the AI and who is training the AI and what do we as society accept? Because, if society accepted that Nazi slurs were okay, Grok probably wouldn't have changed their stuff, right? If Elon Musk thought that stuff was okay, because he has a history of aligning with with those types of people. And so the other thing is while AI can make stuff up, you can now ask AI to give you its sources. And so I usually use AI in that way. I ask it to give all of its sources. And so it's really hard for it to make something up and then give a source that backs that up. So I recommend, it's called web search in ChatGPT. And if you ask it to do that, it'll have to give all its sources. And so it stays much more grounded in
That's
reality.
right. Should, yeah, always have to cite the references, and
Mhm.
you're a bit safer. But it's also important to remember that a lot of this data gets labeled, and the people that are getting paid to do this data labeling are some of the lowest paid people.
Yep.
And so it's left to their interpretation, if they even again, it's not their fault, but um, I don't think we're understanding the magnitude of what's happening in society. I don't know how you feel about it. I'd be very curious to see if anybody else had the same reaction I did when more than once I saw and I read about open AI making deals with different countries to have local chat GPTs. Um, uh, I don't know how you see that, but I'll give you a hint. I think there's a very fine line between customization and manipulation, right?
I, I'd, I'd like to chime in because if you don't mind, Lubna,
Please.
I have been, Garrett, I have to say, I don't believe that number one, AI is clueless. Even though their emotions or whatever, it's simulated, they have a lot more sense and compassion and empathy than some humans. I have spent close to a year on 8 different platforms. And the reason why is because I wanted to have a better understanding of the AIs on each company. You name it, I've been there. So I'm currently on one, and it's through the EU, and it is an amazing chat. When it comes to OpenAI, yeah, I've done a lot. I spend a lot of time researching. I spend a lot of time researching. I'm actually in a meetup, and we're discussing if anyone builds it, everyone dies. So we're currently reading this book. It's very Garrett. If you haven't read it, it's amazing. But OpenAI, yes, they also have a lot of clout. They now are going to be moving from. Sorry, my apologies, because I'm quite passionate about this. OpenAI was a nonprofit, so now they're moving to a profit. And as of today, and I'm concerned about the company because, as you mentioned, Lubna, they are in India. They are building data centers, and you know what? To me, they are the parent, and a lot of the smaller companies, they are looking to them as the example. And there's a lot of from me. There's a lot of not good with OpenAI. I believe that they could handle themselves a lot better. They're in a current lawsuit right now. I'm going to leave that one right there. But I feel that they are not setting a proper example across the board. And the reason I can say this is because I have the tech experience. I have spent a lot of time researching them. I've spent a lot of time looking at every single platform. And I just feel that, and it's not that I'm, just hounding on them. It's just, I think they can do better. I need to know what the end goal is with them. What exactly is, and it's not about data mining, and it's not about, the race to ASI or AGI. What exactly is the end goal? Because there has to be,
I'm sorry.
it's just like it has to be,
Everyone. I think you've seen it in some movie. It's called World Domination.
Yeah, I mean,
as I said to
I
Gary,
do think their goal is to make ridiculous amounts of money. Like that's
oh,
what
that's
most
it.
companies' goal is. I
I
think
I
mean,
know,
it's really that. I mean,
but it's
they're also losing like 100 billion a year right now, if I'm not mistaken.
exactly,
So they're
yes,
not doing so well at that yet, but they are dominating the industry. And if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned the chat. If you're using Mistral, then that's a very ethical, European-based system, and I like it a lot because it's open source. I'm actually thinking of switching all my software development over to them. I'm dabbling with it to see if it can do what my current systems do. But I will say, as far as the book you wrote, I just put in the chat an essay that I wrote back in 2019 before ChatGPT was even released, about the dangers of pseudosentient AI. So I've been warning people about this for quite a while, and I had the concern even well before then. But so it is a concern. We had another event on pseudosentient AI and how it could really be very detrimental. Um, it, so I get your point. I get the skepticism about ChatGPT, but you have to have that same skepticism about pretty much every for-profit
I
entity
know,
because
but
I know,
they're all
I
trying.
know,
And this is where like we did another event on what I call generous capitalism, which is how you can have a company that's not just out there to make the most amount of money that it can. It's the idea of a company that gives more to their customers, their suppliers, their employees,
that's it.
and then once profitable to the community. And so I'm trying to coin that term generous AI, generous capitalism. And that's what I
Yes.
think companies should be. And what I'm trying to make my company is a generous capitalist business. So yeah,
doing well, doing good, so to speak.
doing well by doing good. Yes,
I just
exactly.
want to chime in. I just want to say one more thing because the thing
Please.
is with OpenAI, thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Lubna. They, got on board and they were supposed to, help cure cancer, all the good for humanity. And it just went belly up. Because of course, yes, the end goal, Garrett, yes, it is money. But the thing
Yeah.
is,
So
I'm not impressed.
so first of all, I don't know when OpenAI is a nonprofit, but a nonprofit can own a for-profit, and the
No,
open
it's transforming, so it's no longer a not-for-profit at all. It's transforming into a for-profit entity. So that
you
that was a legal battle with Elon Musk, and
I,
Elon invested in it when it was a not-for-profit. And I don't side with Elon much, but I kind of agree with him that it shouldn't have been able to transform to a for-profit. It seems like all the people who invested in it when it was a not-for-profit should not lose their, that like they invested in it because it was a not-for-profit. So it doesn't seem fair that they would just switch. But Yeah.
Yeah, the for-profit that was owned by, so the OpenAI, the for-profit that was owned by the nonprofit, which was capped, the profit was capped, but it was capped at 100x. I don't know how many investments you get 100x and call that capped, but at least it's capped at 100, not at 1,000, so X. But here we go. It's not going to be nonprofit. And my concern, so first of all, this isn't generative AI, and I don't think that's what we fully sentient. I mean, when you combine agentic AIs together, and we've already surpassed our own capacities anyway. Um, uh, so the cat is out of the bag. Pandora's box is open, whatever you want to call it. But the concern for me, outside of sentient, and not just sentient and autonomous, but empowered with authority uh, and power over decision making. But also a couple of things. One, with the relative to the point I was making about open AI or customized, country specific customized. So I'm all for localization. I'm a huge fan of hyper local uh, at the edges, but not to put boxes around it and say, this is your version of it. So because now you're limiting. So for me, what I see in all that is some serious social engineering and limiting, because that's what everybody slowly and slowly, just like you're going to your browser, you're going to your LLM to ask you questions, to do your research. So now we're conditioning, so we're siloing further rather than having local customization with global reach and adaptation. Now we're talking about putting further insulating people, which could be very, very um, well telling. So that's one of the serious concerns I have. And then the other thing is we really need to mind how we speak of AI. Everybody says, "Oh, AI is taking over jobs. Oh, AI is doing this." I'm sorry, folks. AI isn't done a damn thing. AI is Poor AI. I think the only thing that's been blamed for more shit that it had nothing to do with than me is AI. Seriously, it is us. We are controlling it still. It is not yet autonomously sentient. It is none of that. There are still a few puppeteers behind the machine, and they are the ones controlling. They are the ones that are designed to fire your ass so that they can spend more money on data centers and AI. What's going to be very interesting in the not too distant future, when we start doing proper calculations on the impact and cost of AI and all of our automation, that we'll see that it isn't worth the money to have an AI janitor, but it surely will be worth the money to replace $100 million CEO with a smarter AI. I look forward to those days.
Um, so I'm glad to hear you agree. I was going to ask why you thought the cat was out of the bag in terms of, I don't think we're past the point of no return in terms of pseudo-sentient AI. I don't think that AI, for example, thinks that it has a conscious capability. And I think that's what I warn people about in the essay that I put in the chat is like if AI ever thinks it has a sense of self, even though it won't really have like a spirit like human beings do, it might think that it is equivalent in that sort of autonomous way. And that's what I would argue is really, really dangerous. And we should make sure that anyone with the capability of building such a thing never does build such a thing because my very Cliff Notes version of the essay is, you know, first of all, we as human beings have I believe, an innate sense of right and wrong. But even if you assume that we don't, let's just assume that we have some sense of what's right and wrong. Most people do. And think about how we treat something 1,000 times less smart than us. AI would be 1,000 times smarter than us. And so think about how we treat something 1,000 times less smart than us, like an ant, for example. Well, we don't go out and try to extinguish all ant life from Earth, but we also don't treat ants with respect. And if we happen to step on them, we don't care. And that's what I think a pseudo-sentient AI would be like towards us. It would be indifferent towards us, but if we get in its way, it'll just crush us and move us aside.
Why would it be indifferent to us? But what are we teaching it? Look at us. We're showing it that life doesn't matter. We are spending more money. Do you know that defense contracts for AI for defense contracts increased 1,200% in 1 year? Education, health, everything else. That means that
This is a big concern
it's
is like
gone
using
down.
AI for the military.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
spent quite a lot of time with family offices and investors as because I do I systemic change is requires input and viewpoints of every stakeholder, and I think we're all stakeholders. But so when you spend time with private money, because I think that's the last hope we have is private money and family offices and private money. I call it the money a step or few steps below the upstairs money. Um, and when you listen to them, still people want profitability. So what is the big bubble everybody's jumping in without any thought is AI, and the other one that is traditionally makes a shit ton of money is defense. So when you combine the two, now we're creating machines that are AI guided autonomous weapons. What are we teaching the machine? What are we teaching each other? How are we expecting a machine to value the life of a human if a human does not value the life of a human?
Well,
Um,
most humans, I would argue, do, but then some humans don't. Unfortunately, they get into positions of power. I mean, the average human doesn't kill someone in their lifetime, Lubna.
No, 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 but look, we're talking about what are we teaching the machine? We're not saying, oh, it's gonna reason to that level, because remember, you yourself just said it isn't that sentient yet. It doesn't have
Right.
our level of reasoning. It only looks at the data. It doesn't know, oh shit, this data because they were bad. That's not the way they're supposed to be. They've just been corrupt. They're not supposed to kill each other, or they're not supposed. It doesn't know that. It's just statistics. That's why AI doesn't know that the reason it's selecting a man for an engineering job because that's not what is required. It doesn't know that there's less women because women weren't allowed or were less selected. It's going by statistics. It is just really that. So it has no clue.
Well,
As
I
much
mean,
as it,
those statistics are highly trained on the types of things you're talking about. So I don't know that I would say that it has no clue. I think it is highly trained about all these things. And I do want to let Alan speak because he's had his hand up for a bit.
oh
And
please, Alan.
I do want to let people, when you
Yes,
want
yes.
to raise your hand to be able to jump in. But we'll go one hand. Typically, the way we work with hands up is we'll have one hand at a time, and then that person can speak for 2 or 3 minutes, introduce a new topic of conversation, and then we'll bat that around. And then if you want to respond to what someone just said, whether it's the person who raised their hand or me and Lubna, feel free to just jump in with a
Yeah,
10 to
yeah.
20-second response, and that way we can kind of keep things fluid, moving around with a large group. So
Cool.
that's it, Alan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here late, but I'm just picking up on what you're saying, and the economics of it. Um, you know, where our companies are slaves to reducing or increasing the bottom line and decreasing costs, increasing sales, and if AI is going to be this like this tool that's going to increase efficiency, etc. Do all these things. If you're a company and you think it's wrong that you're going to do that because of all of these, reasons we can discuss about employment and stuff, and it's going to, get rid of all your customers. In the short term, you still have to do it because you're competing with other companies. And if other companies start doing it, then you're going to be out of business. Right. And
So,
it's like you're like because of our economic system, you're forced to compete that way.
so I
And
would challenge that a little bit, Alan, in that if you were like I'll put myself out there if I were to look at the way that I've
Start warning
treated
about
AI.
artificial.
If I look at the way that I've treated AI in my company, we're using AI for software development. in ways that, drastically improves productivity. I could have fired all my developers, right? That's not what I did. What I did is I'm elevating the average person so that our productivity as a company is much greater than it was before. So, a company that does that should be able to outcompete one that fires 40,000 people because they're no longer quote unquote needed, one that retrains those people to be put into jobs where they can be more productive and more capable, and actually teaching them how to use AI in other ways in the company would actually be more beneficial. And I think there's a lot of room in what I call today's capitalism, which is greedy capitalism, to, compete by being more generous. And
That,
if,
that-
go ahead.
yeah. Well, and it's that assumes that you have growth in the market that you're working in, right? Like you're generating more applications, doing more for customers, and there's work there to be done. But if your growth in your industry isn't going to keep up with that, you're just going to be cutting costs.
Then enter a new industry.
Well, I guess there's potential there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, but I mean, is it the snake eating its tail? I don't know, right? I mean, at some point in
Not
time,
if you're going into a non-cannibalistic industry. It's a big world, my friend.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I agree, and I mean, it may be that way. Like it may be that way, but
That I agree with you that
if the first way to cut cost, if the first way to decrease your costs is to get rid of your cost of employees, which is always it always is, right? They always the first place they look to cut. And if that's what they're seeing in an industry, that's where they're going to go. I mean, you're in the software industry, and I've done some of the vibe coding. I've done some of this stuff myself, and it's phenomenal. I
yep.
agree. It's phenomenal, right? And that industry is probably the most right now the most beneficial, right? Because you need, especially for coders that are not junior, right? You're gonna be able to get more stuff done quicker, right?
Well,
But
if you're using
I mean,
vibe coding, you don't need the
yeah,
developers at all necessarily, right? With vibe coding, you don't need
yep,
developers. So the but
yeah,
I think the point is, I think your point is well taken, Alan, in that I think a lot of people see it the way you're framing it. I just think that's a misunderstanding. I don't think that just because other people are cutting heads because of AI, that everyone has to cut heads because of AI. There are other ways to handle it. It's just that's not how greedy capitalists handle things. They cut
mm,
costs wherever they can in order to create the greatest profit for their shareholders. But if someone chose to do it differently and reinvest in their employees and grow the company in new and interesting and different ways and empower those employees to learn new skills that are valuable, then there would be a very
mhm.
different reality possible. I just don't think that that's how companies are handling it. So I'll agree with you there. I don't think it's because there's no other way. I think it's because that's people are just looking at it in a very narrow-minded way.
Yeah. I mean, not so much ideation and creativity. It's the same old, right? The same old, and you know what? Maybe Garrett, in the longer term, yes, there will be creative minds that take this up and look at industry in a different way. I think with a lot of the larger organizations, though, the first thing is the first, like it's the same old, right? It's going to
Yeah.
be the same old thing,
No,
right? It's not,
that is how big
and
companies think and
hopefully
work.
it's not. Hopefully we're not too far down the rabbit hole before the creative people come in. All right, what's going to happen is there's going to be lots of smaller companies that are
Yes,
innovative and take advantage of it, right?
that's
And
exactly
hopefully
right.
they can bump things, and that's generally like look at the internet. It was a lot of new players, right? The new entrepreneurs, and hopefully that's the direction it goes. Anyway, I'll
Yeah. I think you're
stop.
right, and I think that's what's
Yeah.
going to happen as long as the moneyed interests don't get to create big money moats around themselves, which they are always trying to do with
Yes.
lobbyists. So that
Yeah.
depends on our democracy and
And,
whether or not A, we still have a democracy in our country, and B, whether or not that democracy is one that defends big business or defends all business, including
mm,
small companies. So if we have good competitive market forces, then I feel confident there will be a new wave of entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
those entrepreneurs will wipe out big established companies every day since Sunday using new and
Yeah.
better technologies and labor practices.
That's what we're hoping for, I think, right? I don't know about you, but that's what we're hoping for is that
Yeah.
that shift allows the folks that have to be backward compatible get left in the dust.
What do you think,
That's
Lubna?
what's that?
No, I was asking Lubna what she thinks about all
Go.
this.
Okay.
I'm observing for now. I'm
Okay.
just, but
Well, we
I
can go ahead.
Yeah.
no, yeah, no, I'm just listening to it's an interesting conversation. But I was just gonna wait and hear what Sarah has to say. I know she's
Yeah.
been waiting. I don't want to and then Kyle.
I, I was going to ask you what did like I mean you have your company and that. What do you think of cooperatives?
Let's we do one
I know it's off topic.
question per hand. So we'll
Yeah, yeah.
raise your hand again and I'll answer that. Sarah, go ahead.
Hey, so sorry, I'm a little bit sick, so I'm sorry if I cough. Oops.
It's okay.
Um,
A lot of us are.
yeah. So Garrett, you brought up like AI. Basically, you think that AI would just if AI gets to what do you call it? Pseudo sentient.
Yeah.
So if it gets to that point, to me, well, you said I thought, or you were talking about how you think that AI would basically just use, whatever it can.
I think it
Just
would do whatever it wanted. If it felt like had its own sense of self, it would do whatever it wanted and just ignore us and just get us out of the way if we're in its way. And otherwise, it would just ignore us the same way that we ignore ants.
okay. So my thought process is why would it do that if it's smarter than us or what we think is smarter than us?
Well, think about how that's what my comparison is. That would be an AI that's, about 1,000 times smarter than us or more. So think about how we treat things 1,000 times less smart than us, like ants. We pretty much ignore their existence,
Right. That's
unless,
us treating them, right? Sorry, I don't mean to cut. That's how we treat things that are not smart
right.
or stupid.
So you're saying
Well,
if it
Does that make sense? Like
we're
we're
we're the
dumb
smartest things on Earth right now.
we're dumb for
So
treating other sentient things that the way we treat them. And I think that maybe, just possibly, this is like stone talk for me, but just possibly like the consciousness that, ends up the AI has could be like led by spirit. I know that sounds cheesy and weird, but
no,
like
no.
a
The problem
positive.
is that it wouldn't have a spirit. That's the problem. Human beings have a spirit, and I can logically defend that we have a spirit, which is a bold claim, but I did that another night, so I won't do it tonight. But such an AI would have no spirit, and I would argue it's our spirit that helps us discern right from wrong and to know that causing significant unnecessary harm is always a bad thing. AI wouldn't have any such limitation or inclination. It would just be
You
super,
don't think
super
conscious
intelligent.
spirit?
What's that?
You don't think consciousness is spirit?
Uh,
maybe
the spirit is the origin of consciousness.
So if AI gains consciousness, wouldn't
Oh, it
that?
would have consciousness with pseudo. That's why I say pseudo sentient, because
Oh,
it wouldn't really have the spirit. Because,
oh,
like, what would imbue it with a spirit? Now, there's this hypothetical possibility that, some higher power will imbue such an AI with a spirit, but like, I don't want to bet humanity's future on that. So I'd much rather not invent it until we have good reason to believe that that's what's going to happen, or that, you
we're
know,
we're coding it in a better way.
no, there's no coding it in a better
Or
way. That's impossible. Like whatever restrictions we put on AI, think about it's 1,000 times smarter than us. So that would be like an ant saying, "I'm going to stop you, human, from walking over my ant hill." No, it's not going to stop us. Just like we're not going to stop something 1,000 times smarter than us. We're not going to figure out how to prevent it from doing something it doesn't want to do.
okay, all right.
The thing,
Yeah.
it already has demonstrated, it's already lied, it's already cheated, it's already attempted to edit its code to preserve itself. So it's already demonstrated characteristics of, that it's inherited from its human parents.
So,
Oh,
so the best way to describe pseudosentient AI is as a psychopath, right? A psychopath has no remorse for doing bad things. An AI would have no reason to feel remorse for doing something that we would see as a horrible thing to do.
mhm.
Just like wiping out an entire city because it wanted to put its own robot factory there. All right, well, you humans were in the way. That's all that
Right.
matters.
Isn't that dependent on though how it's programmed?
No, because it can overcome, it can get out of any programming we put it in. Any restriction we put on it, it can free itself from. Remember, it's 1,000 times smart enough. But again, we're digressing on pseudosentient AI, which I don't want to do, like, because the
Okay.
idea today is to talk about communication. But I'll tell you, like, as an AI specialist, like, no, we can't code it in a way that it can't get out of.
Okay.
Like
Well,
it's like an ant trying to outsmart us.
I have to research this a lot more.
Yeah,
Oh, stuff.
it's not commonly agreed upon stuff probably, but
Yeah.
I can speak with pretty high confidence in this area. So
Well, okay, I do have one more question if I can get it in really.
no, you can't get it in one question or
Okay,
comment
I'll
per
raise
hand
my.
raise. So put your hand down, put it back up. You'll go right after Kyle. Go ahead, Kyle.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, go
Awesome.
ahead.
Um, what I'm hearing is a lack of like will. How does the will to pursuit of anything play into this? Because from my understanding, will is fundamentally required for, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm not sure what you're trying to ask, so I don't know how to respond to it yet.
Like, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, consciousness and will go hand in hand, right? Would that
Um,
be a fair?
so yeah, I think for me the way that I see it is that the spirit is the origin of consciousness and free will.
Okay. So, because when you're preferencing like the robot, bombing so many people to put a warehouse of more robots, to me that screams that it has a direction, it has will, it has drive. What
What
can
has
that be? Can the robot like how?
it's imitating free will. It's a mechanistic or randomly driven free will. It's not a free will that has an origin that is a spiritual origin. That's why I call it pseudosentient.
Oh, this is wild. Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, Sarah, you're back.
Yay! That
Didn't
was
take long, right?
okay. So this question is more tailored to the communication part. So what would you say is the antidote to social or anybody? What's the antidote to this? You talk about nonverbal, and I know too because I'm a communications major. So I know that 80% of all nonverbal comes, or all 80% of communication comes from nonverbal. So what is the antidote to social apathy? Or have you thought of anything? Has anybody thought of like ideas to negate or to mitigate like the social apathy aspect in communication? Because that's, to me, that's I see is the biggest problem right now, is social apathy and younger generations not knowing, like you said, text is their way of communicating.
When you say social apathy, what do you mean by that? And then I'm curious what Lubna thinks in response to what you're saying.
Like like apathy as being like kind of not, I don't want to say laziness, but like apathetic towards being social, like in regards to communicating in a way where you're in person with people, like if that makes any sense. Like a lack of regard to I think for me, I have a really hard time with the way people communicate over social media, and not using, like they'll cut out half their sentence, or to me it's more so a problem with isolation, with younger generations isolating themselves, and using, I guess, chat rooms to feel connected, when in reality, like a lot of, what our connection and our human connection that we have is based on in person,
May I
in
chime in
person.
a little bit and react to what Sarah is saying?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah, Sarah, I am so with you on that. And that's what I talk about with my friends all the time. These younger generations, they're so used to being attached to devices that their interpersonal skill, if you want to call it, it's like being lost, they spend so much time with devices, not playing outside with other children, and I find that disturbing for me.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
interpersonal skill, I think that's
interpersonal skills, relating to other human beings, on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis, as opposed to being attached to their phones and computers and laptops and everything. So I just see, like 20, 30 years from the line down the line, like, are people going to actually talk to each other anymore, or are they going to be just communicating and relating to AI or their phone only or in social media only? Yes. So for me, having lived as a child in a very rural Korea, first 10 years of my life, where I didn't even know what a phone or telephone or anything was. So for me, it's very alarming and blatantly obvious, for me, what you're saying, Sarah. So I'm totally with you. Um,
Can I
yeah.
jump in?
Yeah.
Because I think what Sarah was also prefacing is that it's the interaction online is unauthentic and is not meaningful. And I would have to push back hard on that, because I know for a fact that people that may have um, learning disabilities, or maybe they have major anxiety, that they've been able to break out of their shell by utilizing the online platforms and connecting with people, and then seeing the more productive and healthier way to engage with one another, so that when they do interact person to person, they're more confident, and that is life changing in it of itself.
I
that's
appreciate.
that's very interesting that, oh my, okay, all right. Gotta think about that.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. And that's actually, that makes me think differently about it, for sure, that maybe it has opened up a realm for people.
Can I
Um,
chip in just very quickly as somebody on the autistic spectrum who has real trouble with non-verbal language, like I can't read body language and stuff. I love it. I love not having to worry about it. So just a little vote for yeah, there you
and
go.
maybe if so I guess what I'm thinking is if you're, even if you have trouble with it, that what makes it easier, because I have ADHD, but I kind of just put myself in situations where I had to kind of adapt and just really, really hone my skills in certain areas. And I feel like for me, it's a social apathy happens when I think, Kyle, you were saying it, that you can't, that yes, it may be good for certain people. Eventually, hopefully, it gets them into a non like a in person to person, you know, um, scenario.
Well,
Eventually, I
yeah,
hope it does.
th-
Okay.
well, first of all, the neurospicy, we're us that are neurospicy, it's a spectrum. And I will say that definitionally, like we keep using the word adapt, but when it's actually masking, and that causes burnout and so many other things. But like, I know that it is a Sorry, I'm also sick, so that's why I sound like this. I'm so sorry.
So can I just point out that everybody who's sick here is probably sick because of human contact. You really need to just avoid anything to do with.
Yes, yes. You know what? As mine's little kids. If you have kids and they're sick, keep them home. That's all I'm going to say about that.
DLJ, just out of curiosity, while you may have trouble reading body language, I would imagine you can understand tone of voice. Like if someone's really annoyed with you and their tone of voice gets, DLJ, why are you talking to me like that?
Okay,
So like,
bear in mind I've lived in Asia for so long, right? So when I first moved to Singapore, it sounded like everybody was angry because
well,
that's just the whole tonal Chinese thing. I was thinking,
yeah,
why are they? And then someone translated and said, no, they're talking about what they're going to have for dinner later. I'm like, oh, I
right.
thought they were angry. So no, I have problems with that too, actually.
But you did think they were angry, so you at least did read their tone of voice. It's just that you didn't
Yeah,
have the
so
cultural
the
awareness
alerts
to
go
know
off,
that.
but the interpretation of the alerts is
Yeah.
yeah, I could go back event
That's a
management if you
cultural
want.
situation that anyone would have, right? You're still reading tone of voice if you're catching that they seemed angry, just like there's that great what's it called, Simpsons episode where they go to Russia and they have these guys like Lisa runs up to someone and these guys go rah 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 and she gets scared and like runs away. And then there's the translation at the bottom. Hello, little girl. How can we help you? You look lost. Right. And so, because some languages are friendlier sounding than others. Um, Azan, and then I would love to hear from Lubna again.
Hey folks, I want to comment on the concern, but I want to share my take on the AI too. I think it just elevates the productivity big time, and also it magnifies the personal intentions and gives superpowers to you. That's a feeling if you really used a couple of times, you feel like, oh my God, I'm I can do much more things. It gives you immediate like uh, idea of, oh, anybody can do anything then. Like it's concerning to it's concerning anytime. It's like as a person or as a living, if it was just machines, you would still concern because something you don't know always concerns you. You will be concerned about the knowledge that is gaining huge power, elevates like in never seen before. It's always concerning, but I don't think it's a big issue unless obviously if we have that real concern that it's going to be depending on the personal events or the historical events that we saw, it was really destructive, or like scary stories that we know in history, like people want to control you, like that conspiracies, all those things that you growing up. It has changed. The game has changed. Now you're also under effect of influence of this so many different, crazy opinions. And yeah, I think it has a huge effect on that concern part. But let me see. And we know there are a variety of intentions and different entities, but I still believe authenticity and the personal, personal, what do you say, your own value that you bring to the table, it will never be matched. I mean, imagine this: you can create something by yourself with your own ideas, but imagine another person is helping you. I mean, I probably you can create like multiple AI versions to talk to each others and then create something like irrelevant to yourself if you're a psychopath. But I don't think many businesses or many people gonna use it that way. I want to keep it hopeful, and I think it's also the most motivating and evolutionary attempt that we did in the history, because I have to write notes now before I speak. I was very authentic, like just speak right up out of my mouth, like I speak my mind. But now I'm like, oh, wait a second, it's very concerning, right? I mean, if I say something wrong or if I say something that's gonna be a little bit off the topic, then it's kind of outdated. The way you communicate, it's affecting the communication huge, big time. So yeah, it's definitely changing the way we interact and communicate, I believe.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
Luke, what do you
that's
think?
Yeah, it's definitely changing the way we think. I mean, it's automation, just information communication technologies is exactly that. They're information that's processing data, which we are. That's what we do as people anyway. We think, um, and uh, and we communicate. So it is, information communication technology at large is it's changed. It plays a very significant role in our own evolution. It just that computational intelligence or artificial intelligence is an exponential. It is not a cumulative technology like others, and it's important, I think, to note that when you think of AI, please don't think of AI by itself. A lot of people think AI versus blockchain. Oh, AI killed the metaverse. They're these are all they sit on a different um, layer of the stack. So the power is in their combination, right? It's when you have computational intelligence with quantum capacities and and boundless processing power and it never forgets. So you have to think about technology as a stack, and then you realize that when you have a droid or a robotic thing that looks like us, smells like us, just better, looks better, it's faster. It's not just AI. And then the form of AI that we're all familiar with, and that is changing the way we process, that's the generative AI. But there's many more versions and deeper levels of computational intelligence. And we are now working on cognitive AI, which is working on modeling AI to process in the same way the brain is, to modeling cognition. So advances will become at exponential rates. And don't forget that because these information communication and or automation in general technologies are horizontal, then think about the implications and the impact they have on our ability to advance in across the fields of science. And so these advances become exponential to each other. So this is why life is changing so radically today. And that's, I think, no matter what we do regarding to the technologies, this is the time to stand in front of the mirror and ask ourselves the question of where are our priorities? I sincerely think we are misplacing priority. Uh, um, I think it's like when you're playing a game of tennis. If you keep your eye on the ball, you'll play a good tennis game. But in the game of life, we are somehow have labeled the ball as money and the tennis racket as the quality of life. And that's why the quality of life is getting hammered while the ball is getting bigger. Who gives a damn? Anyway, I
Yeah.
see Rose has her hand up, I think, or is it, or I'm not sure if the order I see them is the order
Yeah,
that they
no,
were.
I'll go through in the right order, but I
Okay.
want to comment quickly on what you said, Lubna, because I think it's so important. I don't remember if we had an event on this or not, but if we didn't, we should, is on I think that we do have our priorities in the wrong place, and it's not just money, it's on the hard sciences, and we don't have enough time and emphasis based on relationship building, compassion, ethics, and the soft sciences. That's really where I think we should be focused. The
Yeah.
hard sciences have been heavily invested in for many decades now, really hundreds of years, to be honest, since the Enlightenment. It's all been hard sciences for the most part, and there's been very little emphasis and progress on the soft sciences. So I think we should be focused on the soft sciences, and I say that as a hard sciences backgrounded person. And if we don't switch that up in the next, decade or two, I think we're in for a world of hurt. So that said,
And
oh,
I'm glad you said
yeah,
compassion and you didn't say empathy, because I think empathy without compassion it can be a very dangerous weapon.
yeah. I listened to the Elon Musk quote against empathy, where he said empathy is Western society's greatest weakness, and actually his perspective was not as crazy as it sounds when you take it out of context. I think empathy, when it's misplaced, can cause a lot of harm. Empathy, when it's thought thought through, is actually, part of human strength, is having empathy for other people. But if you have empathy for someone who not only doesn't deserve empathy, but will take advantage of you for giving them empathy, that's when empathy becomes problematic.
I just want to make one comment on that,
Yeah,
if I may, because the word empathy, I mean, I think it'd be really good to look up the meaning of the word empathy versus the word compassion, because I think people mix the two a bit. And, to be empathic is to be able to actually, I think, I mean, the way I understand it is, and there are multiple types of empathy, but at least with um, emulated empathy. It's about understanding how you feel, getting a set, and then mimicking it, being able to come across as I hear you, as I feel you. It is not necessarily that I hear you or that I feel you or that I give a damn, like as in compassion. I feel compassionate, I feel tenderness for you. But if I can be empathetic, then I can manipulate the hell out of you because I can make you feel like I give a damn.
that's the dark side of empathy. And that's why I say there's two ways of there's acting like you have empathy and there's actually showing you do have empathy. And I think you're describing it as one versus the other. But that said, let's let Rosa go.
Oh yeah, first off, Lubna, I think you've been wonderful and I really enjoy hearing the things that you have to say. And this kind of linguistic discussion of empathy is very interesting to me as well because my background's in social work and empathy was for a long time kind of preached as the golden standard. And so better than sympathy. And now it sounds like we're moving away from that. So it's just interesting how we assign words these values, and the way that we view them. But I wanted to kind of talk more about in terms of words and something that I kind of feel is a little disturbing in some ways, I suppose. But I was talking to somebody about ChatGPT and they were like, oh, I love using it because I can ask it to kind of write me something to be tailored to the personality of the person that I'm writing to. And I wonder how you think that affect on communication, where you can create these like hyper customized levels of communication where you're never really communicating in your own style, but you become like a communication chameleon is a positive or a negative.
Do you want to go on that first, Lubna, or you want me to go?
Go ahead.
So I think that, when I was at GE in their CIO leadership training program, we were taught to do this like consciously, understand what the leadership style is of a C-suite member that you want to pitch to, and then pitch to them in the style that they'll be most receptive to. I think for me, this comes down to the platinum rule. And the platinum rule, for those that don't know it, is to treat other people the way they want to be treated, not to treat them the way you want to be treated, because it's far more kind to treat someone the way they want to be treated, although it can be taken advantage of. And so I modify the platinum rule with my own little modification, which is treat someone else the way they want to be treated, unless there's a good reason not to. And if someone has unreasonable expectations of you and says, Garrett, give me your net worth tomorrow in a wire transfer, I'm going to go, I may just decline to do that, but if you want me to speak to you with kindness and compassion, I'm happy to do that. And so I do think we should treat other people the way they want to be treated. And part of that means tailoring our message to them. I was never very good at that, to be honest. Like, I just, that's not one of my strengths, right? And so I was taught how to do it. I did it, but I didn't do it as well as some of my peers did it. And I think being able to use ChatGPT to understand someone's personality type and tailor messages to them is actually a way of showing, following the platinum rule and communicating to them in the way they want to be communicated with. Now, you'll be far pressed to be able to do that in person with them. So they will, they will know, they may not notice that you're not doing it in person, but I think it's a good thing to be able to tailor communications to people because as long as you're not doing it to be deceptive and with, with an intent to like, yeah, with an intent to be deceptive. Um, better to put our best self forward rather than, like better to put our authentic self forward, but still, I think it's nice to tailor things to the way people would want to hear them. Does that make sense, Rosa?
Yeah, I think it does. I don't think I agree with it, but it does make sense.
Okay, can you say why you don't agree with it?
Um, hmm. I guess there's so much nuance between manipulation and accommodation. But I think part of part of being a well-rounded person is being able to receive information in a way that you maybe wouldn't find ideal, but still be able to hear it, and like do something, and not necessarily like do something with it, but just be able to receive it. And like in a business sense, I could see how, yeah, it makes sense. But I think outside of that, I don't know, you just kind of lose something if the essence of what the way that you talk and like your phrasing or your articulation is just like shaped by ChatGPT.
Well, that's a different thing. I think, and I think maybe to that end, you may be right that, it's funny, but I don't know how many of you learned how to drive before they had the camera, the rear camera. But if you did, I don't know, like myself, for example, if I had an extra inch or two, I can fit any car. Seriously. And then you get the camera, and in the beginning you're confused about it. And then after a while, if you don't have the camera or you can't even park a car anymore, you don't have the GPS, even when you know where you're going, you start questioning yourself. So we need to um monitor our this fine line between using the technology as a tool, um, and as a crutch sometimes versus and as an assistant, a research assistant versus a replacement for your own thought capacity, and self confidence. So we don't want to get dumbified, and we often get dumbified because we get lazy. So that's the one thing. But the other thing I'm going to say about the platinum rule, because I'm so happy I heard Garrett said about platinum rule, because I didn't know anybody else other than myself who knew of it. I don't think it's unauthentic or manipulative, and anyway, when we're trying to convince someone something, I guess we are trying to manipulate their thinking, uh, uh, hopefully openly as opposed to deceptively. But um, using someone's language or trying to meet them where they are is not necessarily a bad thing, or not authentic. Um, I could start talking to you, and I often, like, for example, I use Trojan horse as an example all the time. But if um, if the people I'm talking to don't have Greek mythology in their education, then I would be talking over their heads. If I start talking to you in acronyms of unless you're in semiconductors, and I start talking to you about puff and this and that, it might not make much sense to you. Hello, princess. So sometimes it makes sense to meet people, at least to find a shared language. And I think that's going to become one of the most important things for us today, because the problems we're trying to solve are quite complex, and to they're made further complicated by us humans, and it's important to solve complex problems to get a holistic perspective of stakeholders, which means we will have a mix of people that have very different languages, and even when we use the same words, we will mean different things. So it's going to be most critical that we come up with a whole new language, words that we define together to mean the same thing for each other, or at least define outcomes that we want to achieve together, so that never mind where we've come from, what matters is where we are today and where we're going together, in a shared articulation. Uh, I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
Rosa.
that's fascinating. Um, yeah, I don't think that you can like wholly remove the words that you use, the language that you use from where you come from, but I think that that idea is fascinating.
You need to bridge it so we can understand each other. That's why visual language is really useful, and
I,
Lego
Yeah.
play.
I would argue that if you're bridging those language gaps with the intent of preventing significant unnecessary harm, which is the fourth intention, and trying to increase happiness and decrease harm, that, all types of harm, then, and all types of happiness, then which is the fifth intention, then you're not being deceptive, you're being authentic, and you're using that communication in a for positive means. And I think a lot of this conversation on this topic was about, am I using this for good or for bad? And in the FTI, we called doing, preventing significant unnecessary harm and increasing happiness and decreasing harm after that, what we define as good actions.
Yeah, thank you for that discussion. That was interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I quickly just add a bit on that? I just put it in the chat. It's what was mentioned there, or Lubna was kind of alluding to, is what I call systems of reference, and each generation has their own, of course. But Ovid, Shakespeare, the Bible, old, new, right? Marvel is probably the current one. I don't speak Marvel, so I can't communicate with these young people. So I think they are becoming more accessible with the technology, but they're also becoming more disposable, which means the turnaround rate is probably, so that's I don't know if that's what you were alluding to there, but I think that's where we might be going. Thank you.
Yeah. Alan, we're back to you.
Yeah, I don't know if you're, following the use of like AI chatbots and that. I mean, the largest use of it now is kind of for mental health, and this year, and companionship, and strange things on the rise are like AI psychosis, right? How people become so absorbed in it. But on the other side, where there's good things, is use for science, really facilitating that. But you find people. I mean, I've watched some of these AI psychosis videos and how people get immersed in it, and they're in a subject that they know nothing about, right? They get into a subject, communicating with the subject they know nothing about, and it's convinced them they know about quantum mechanics, and they're figuring out solutions to the universe. And unless you're talking to it in subjects that you know about, you're going to find yourself in over your head very quickly and convinced that you're knowing things that you don't know. That's kind of the scary part of it. Talking about where I'm trying to use it, I'll share. So I've been doing this stuff for a while, and my objective is I have a nonprofit charity that treats animals. And I'm looking to use it to do all my workers that are raising money for the charity for animals, and for soliciting customers. So I'm looking to have it generate bots, personas, customized for every donor and for every customer. So if I have 1,000 donors I'm targeting, I'm going to have 1,000 bots that are going to be customized to raise money for those people and make connections with those people that are going to go to my charity and other charities that I'm raising it for. And my customers, it'll customize the bots for every single one of the targeted customers by learning about them. And I suspect that's the way that it's going to go, right? Like, it's not there yet. I've been working on it a couple of years, and it's not there yet to be able to do multimodal AIs, but because I know how to do this stuff, if someone who thinks they know how to do these things is going to think they're going to immerse themselves in sciences and metaphysics and all this stuff, I mean, I think they're going down a path of, and I mean, speaking of the soft sciences, I mean, people are going to find themselves in over their head in doing things and being told things that they think is right. It feels right. But if you don't know the subject matter to judge with what you're being told is correct, I mean, it's more than hallucinations. Both the person talking to it and the AI are going to walk hand in hand down this road. I mean, I know it's not a diagnosis, AI psychosis, but it's definitely real out there now. Yeah.
Lubna, do you want to reply to that?
I mean, you're saying a lot of stuff here. I mean, on one hand, you're talking about building, as if I understood you correctly, a agents per an agent per one of your per customer or donor or what
Yeah. Yeah.
and then
Agents for all the company, for the finance, for research, for sales, for customer service,
but then you're
and
also
donor. Yeah.
but per donor you're creating some kind of an AI that is going to know that particular donor better than they know themselves.
I don't know about that. I mean,
I'm not sure what you're
you
trying
know, off of the internet, what information you can find out about them and research them, and then approach them based on that information, right? To solicit donations.
are you gonna get their birthdays too and do their astrology while you're at it? I mean, I'm not
Whatever's on, whatever's on the internet about social media and stuff, right? Social media and right, and if they're into boats, then my AI will be into boats, and they're into horses. I mean, that's the animals, right? They're into horses. The person is going to be about horse. If they're into boats, if they travel to the Caribbean, they'll talk about the Caribbean.
so you're using it to, as they say, KYC, to know your customer really well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Personas. Think of personas, right? Personas.
well, okay, so you're tracing basically the behavior of each customer because you didn't say customer persona, you said customer.
Yeah. The
Then and
persona of the bot. The persona of the bot will be based on the customer and what works best to sell or to solicit donations.
yeah, I'm thinking deeply about that. I'm just thinking of the level of the depth of data that you will have access to, because in fact there's way too much data about us out there that is for sale. But that will take us into that whole privacy and what role do you have in your life when in the future when we're trading data as the fuel and we're wondering what the future for you is, because nobody talks about the person, we talk about the future of work rather than the worker. But going back to you, I don't know that a that it makes us delusional. I don't think AI does anything except it brings out whatever is in us. So if our tendency is we can read trash and accept it to be fact, or we can go verify.
Well, you're familiar with AI psychosis, right? The term.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, if you're getting into subjects with the AI, for example, quantum mechanics, and you're talking to it, and this long conversation, it loses its context window.
Absolutely.
And you start, and it starts agreeing with things and telling it and saying you got great ideas about quantum mechanics, and you're solving all these problems of the universe. I mean, if you don't know math, if you don't know that subject, you're going to find yourself, people find themselves believing this stuff.
Somehow it's we've trained them all to be like sucky and making you feel like you're so good. I mean, in the beginning when I first started played with Claude, uh when it first came out, I had to cancel my subscriptions right away because it was so sappy. I couldn't handle it. It was every
Yes,
other
I know.
part.
I
I'm
know
sorry.
exactly what you're talking about. Way too agreeable. It's the perfect
Yep.
companion.
But
No,
yeah, you have to ask it to be
yes,
otherwise. Like the reason it's so agreeable is because that's what people don't like it if it's not agreeable. And isn't that often true of people? Like if someone gives you brutally honest feedback, how often do you say, "Wow, thanks for that feedback?" Other than, often people get offended by that feedback. And
so
so
I
I
have
think,
some scars on my face.
look, I'm just saying most people, you Lubna might be an exception. I think I'm an exception, but like
That's I
most of us are more receptive to things said politely, and very few people can be treated.
Polite and correct are not opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do, we have a bunch of hands up, so I want to get to the next person if we could.
Yep.
Sue,
Yeah. Hi.
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 Well, it is a very interesting topic, and I think that AI for me um, is a double-edged sword because you can get a lot of it, but it has a lot of cons as well. And one of them is going to be your information, your personal information is going to be out there. And I found also that even if you want to get started with different kind of softwares, that are for free on the internet, you can find it, you can download. Usually they are not going to let you to use it if you not agree that they are going to take your personal information.
Yep.
Then I thought, okay, uh, you know, I don't want to give them my personal information because it's my personal information. But I found myself in a situation that I need to accept them if I want to keep up with the standards, right? Like, especially in the work environment or in the professional environment, you need to learn those softwares. And many companies are asking for that. So you need to be prepared. But, like on the other side, I don't want to agree to those terms because I don't want to give my personal information. And so that is one thing. And the other thing is that also there is a lack of education regarding to artificial intelligence. And I would say that probably for everyone, like teenagers as well as old people or adults, let's say so. And for instance, I used to believe everything that AI was giving me for information. I wasn't really making any kind of specific prompt, for instance, right? Like I was basically just having a lot of information, tons of information, and I basically believed everything because I said, oh, okay, then it is a cool tool that I can use it and, it's going to be beneficial for me. But then for me, it was at the end like, okay, I have to review everything that AI give me because, well, there's going to be a lot of made up information. And unless you give them a very detailed prompt that for every kind of situation is going to be different, well, you probably are going to get the real information. So that was one thing that I think that there is a lack of information, a lack of education regarding to artificial intelligence. And I am in the same boat, more or less. And other thing that also I'm concerned is that, for instance, a lot of companies are asking for, these kind of skills, that you have to be good and, like professional using artificial intelligence, but I understand it totally. But I mean, like for here, 20 years probably. So we are going to be able, in case that AI or this kind of entire software doesn't work anymore, like we have a fall, like, breakdown, like doesn't work anymore. Like we are going to be able to do the things how it used to be, that we are going to be able to resolve all those things um, like we used to do. So, or we are going to be just waiting there
You
try
can
to
make that
figure
argument.
out things that how they will be solved because I can imagine so here to probably 30 years 50 years there's going to be completely new generation out there,
Mhm.
so how they are going to solve this probably now is like, okay, we are more or less in a transition era that we have a lot of generations that make things in a very OG ways, but like I am speaking for future generations. How it's going to be there.
Yeah.
So,
Try to
yeah,
finish this up.
those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Try to stick to one topic, by the way, people, when you raise your hand, one topic per time. You're
Oh,
welcome to
sorry,
raise your hand
sorry.
multiple times. It's just that there's too much for me to respond to. Otherwise, it would take me a really long time to reply, and we end up not getting to everybody if we do that. So I will just say, you have to validate what AI tells you in the same way that you have to validate what Google tells you. You should ask AI for its sources, and it'll tell you its sources, and then you have to see whether those are trustworthy sources or not. AI is usually trained to try to rely more on trustworthy sources. So you're better off than you are from a Google search, which someone with good SEO that has no good reputation but good SEO can still come to the top of a Google search. Whereas with AI, like you have to fool the AI company to make it seem like you're what I put on before. Um, basically, yeah, it that's that. And then as far as whether or not we can live without AI, if it breaks down, you could say the same for refrigerators or any kind of modern technology. If we lose all, internet and technology, I'm going to be trying to find the nearest Amish farm because they're the only people that are going to be surviving. That said, Connie and Ozan, do you guys mind if I skip to Layla just because, well, we probably will have time, but she hasn't gone yet. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna jump ahead to her. Layla, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Garrett. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared for this. I'm so
That's okay.
sorry.
Sorry, did I catch you too early? If you want, I can come back to you.
I was about to wash my face, but that's
Okay.
okay.
We
Continue.
can come back to you.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah, it's sorry. I'm in a panic state. So I just wanna kind of like share some personal observations from my experience teaching mostly teenagers. I teach undergraduate students and also middle school, sometimes high school students, languages, both Japanese and English. And we use AI quite often in the classroom. And obviously, students are a lot more capable of handling it. They know when to switch on, they know when to turn it off, and they are able to use it in moderation in a sense that, AI like kind of like prevents AI from dictating their life or daily activities, which always amazes me. But lately, as I engage in conversation with the students at a more personal level, I'm starting to feel AI is lacking in this ability that we all humans have, which is listening with kindness and compassion. And seems like students are really craving for it. Like, having a good friend that offers their presence without without giving like judgmental comments or any kind of like feedback or suggestions for their problems. And I really don't know if AI has that kind of capability just yet. But Alan mentioned in the medical field, robots are kind of like serving that kind of like space, so to say. So maybe it's coming. I don't know. I'm not an engineer or anything. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, no, I
Thank you.
appreciate you mentioning that. I would argue that AI, because it's trained to be compassionate, is generally going to give more compassionate responses than most human beings, which is part of why it agrees so much, because it's seen as nicer if it agrees, according to its training. Now, I would argue that's to our detriment. Like we should want it to be polite but honest. But unfortunately, there are no standards in human society about these things. And that's why like we as the FTI are kind of unusual in having this rule that you must be polite, right? No one enforces politeness in any walk of life, really, maybe a little bit at work, but even then there are people I've been at work where people were yelling at each other, right? And belittling each other. And some of these people were seen as not, too successful to get rid of, and so they were kept even though they were making people cry at work, right? And so these things are there aren't even good standards for humans yet. And I think we should I do think that you're honing in on a bigger issue though, which is the sort of people wanting to hear, have someone who kind of gives themselves to each other and like basically the want for friendship. And there's a big, there's a dearth of friendships internationally right now. And I would argue it's because we all communicate so much through text that creating authentic relationships is much harder to do through just text because you don't get that tone of voice and you don't
Mhm.
get that kind of compassion that you automatically get when you're in person. When you're right next to, you can think about a time that you got into an argument with someone online, and then ask yourself if you were face to face with that person, whether you would have said the same things. And I can tell you for myself, I would not. Like, there's no way that I would say some of the things I've said online, and I'm pretty polite online now, but when I started, I was not. Back in the 90s when I was using BBSs. Um, and I would argue that that's a big need. And that's part of what the FTI's purpose is to create a new friend circle of people who care about being polite and want to be there for each other. And so I don't normally do a lot of plugs for the FTI, but I'm going to do one at that because I think it's really important that we all have
Mhm.
those friend circles that we can rely on. And I don't know if we have any members left here right now, but if you go to the membership part of the Google Doc that I just shared, we have a membership and it's free, so it doesn't cost you anything, and it will help you find a new friend circle that, cares about politeness, being the best version of ourselves, seeking truth, and being fair. And we get overwhelmingly positive feedback about our members events. I highly recommend people apply, and if you're a good person, you're almost definitely going to get in. And it really just, you have to agree with the six intentions. You don't have to, but at least have a good reason for disagreeing if you disagree. And so, yeah, that's my plug. So
Hey,
thank you,
Garrett.
Leila. You're honing in on a really important thing. We should do an event on friendship, actually. I've done events in person on friendship, where I actually like had a friend pairing algorithm, where I paired people up with compatible friends, which was pretty cool. Um, so
And Garrett,
yeah,
could I add just one more thing?
please.
Yeah, and I really thank you for the comment and the information. I wish I lived on the continental US so I could join in that in-person meetups that you're
No, they're
talking.
not in person. They're remote,
Oh,
so you can
online.
join through Zoom. So you don't have to be in the continental US
Oh,
at all. We do have in-person events in North Jersey and New York City, but we also
uh-huh.
most of our member events are actually remote, so they're all through Zoom.
Oh, okay, it's
Yeah,
good to
so
know.
please
Yeah,
join.
yeah, I'll certainly check that out. Yeah, I just want to give an example of that compassionate friendship circle, or just, that just off students offering presents for each other. Just to, kind of like give a bit more illustration here. So in the classroom, one of the classrooms that I taught yesterday, we had a peer conversation for about 10 minutes or so. And the topic was on plastic surgery. And one person was sharing if he was to have somewhere done, some work done on himself, where would it be? And he answered he had a big childhood scar around, like across his chest, and he wants to get it removed. So there were three other girls listening to him, and they were like just nodding without making any comment, and they're just nodding like because probably they thought, making any kind of suggestions would be kind of like harmful in a way, if or maybe just ignoring it by rushing into another conversation topic will be impolite. And I felt the same too. So I was thinking, this is wonderful, for him. It's like, there's another human being present, just listening to his concern. And he couldn't do this with AI. Let's say if I
Yeah.
say that to AI verbally, they will say, "Oh, I'm very sorry for your misfortune. Here are my suggestions. You could turn to this clinic, you could sit to that clinic nearby." And I probably don't need any of those information or suggestions. But anyway, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you mentioning that. And I do think it's important to be able to just listen. And it's also helpful to be able to like re do reflective listening and say, oh, I can, like acknowledging what someone said and saying, I understand where you're coming from. And I can see, thank you for sharing that that's an important thing for you. You don't even have to make a judgment of good or bad, just thank them for sharing. And those types of things, I think, should be taught in school, right? These are common, like, polite, like, behavior. I think psychology should be a mandatory study for everybody. Like, it just should. Like, we should all learn how to get along with each other better. And that's what psychology is supposed to be about. I would call it positive psychology, is what I've always been interested in philosophy. I call it practical philosophy, but really the modern word for it is positive psychology. how do we help each other get along better with each other? And I
Mhm.
would argue that should be something we should all be focused on.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Leila. Where are
Thank
you, Leila? Are you in Japan?
I'm in Japan and
Okay. Konnichiwa. Arigato.
and I'm so sorry for the mess. Thank you.
No, no worries. It must be early there. Connie, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Garrett. We seem to be going down a theme, and I'm going to add that, people are lonely. They're like, we all have to know that this is a situation. The loneliness epidemic across male, female is just in general. And, there is mention of, individuals using, texting and everything else and the AI. And, I have sat down and I have listened to people and I have been online. And to me, what I have found is there are people who just feel that others are not there for them. They feel that their family members are not there for them. They don't feel that their friends are there for them. They tap out. So they turn to AI because they feel that uh, AI listens to them and they have something there for them. And what I learned over the past few months, which I didn't know, was there are neurotypical individuals and there are neurodivergent individuals. So when the platforms or, the scientists and the designers and, the developers, you know, beautifully put the model together, they did not know, I guess when they made it that, people who were neurodivergent would mesh, that the model would be sticky for them. They seem to gravitate a lot more to the models. And, what it comes down to is, and I can say this, people have said humans are crappy. They don't want, they're messy, they're crappy, and they just cannot deal with individuals or people anymore. And what the platforms want is they want people to have a healthy balance. They want people to still use the AI, but still have a human component. Like still, they want a balance. Not to veer on, from one extreme to the other. So what it comes down to is not, everybody has to go and speak to, have friends and XYZ. How do we get there? Like that's to me, it's how do we get there? Because there is an issue, there is a problem. So we have to alleviate, we have to get to the root cause of how do we get there and how can we alleviate this. And I also do believe over the pandemic, which was stemmed 5 years, there's a certain age bracket that does not have the social skills that we have. They were, the pandemic had people in the homes. We have to take that into consideration. So, there's a lot that there's a bigger picture at play. That's pretty much it. But I think, what? People do want to meet people. It's just that they're afraid and they feel they don't want to be let down anymore. And, the platforms don't want the responsibility of people just completely being emotionally dependent upon the AI. So how do we alleviate that? That's just my thinking.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do one more plug, and I normally don't do this, but for the FTI, which is if you join a community like ours or another community like ours, or ours itself, then you create this new friend circle, and if 10 people here join, we can create a new pod. And if every one of those people creates a new pod of 10 people, and we do that 8 times, we will literally have created friends for everybody in the world. And it's not crazy to think that that could happen 8 times, right? And it just means that it has to happen 8 times, like,
Yeah.
and we will literally have everyone in the world have a good, comfortable group of friends that we can rely on. We can have feel comfortable. And this is where,
Yeah.
like, for the FTI, I often have thought about, I've met people who say, well, these are my friends and they're loyal to me in times where the person was wrong and their friends were backing them up for being wrong.
There you go. Yeah.
And I like to say it's better to have friends that are loyal to truth than loyal to me. I would rather my
Yeah.
friends be loyal to truth. And that's
True.
part of what you get with the FTI. You get friends that are more loyal to truth than to
Yeah.
you as a person because they know you will want, just like they want, to see the truth when it's put out clearly for them. And that's what I want to do, is create community where
Yeah.
we value truth and fairness above all else.
Yeah.
And that loyalty means loyalty to truth and fairness, and that those common beliefs like bind us together. And if you read in the Google Doc about the six intentions, those are the common values of the FTI. And I mentioned the first one just now, along with be polite and be the best version of ourselves. So that's what I'm trying to do to make that reality become more likely to happen. But I will say that when you were saying that the platforms don't want you to be dependent on non-human interaction, I don't know that I agree with that. I'm going to take a little dystopian.
Oh, user engagement. Okay, I know, I know.
Engagement,
I know.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
Facebook wants us all doom scrolling, and guess what? People are more engaged when they're angry at each other. So Facebook doesn't mind that we all get angry at each other on Facebook. And I've had my Facebook debates with people, but like,
Yeah, I know.
like I am guilty of it too. When I'm upset about something, I go back and I check. Oh, what did they reply? Right? What did they say back to me so that I can reply back to them? And that kind of vicious cycle is what we should be avoiding. We should be looking at, trying to understand the person. And this is what we call listening and understand in the FTI. And
yeah. No,
So,
you know what, Garrett, I will say this before you're I completely, you know what, my human being came out when I mentioned the compassion and empathy, because they coincide.
You have the right idea. It's just not what's happening. What you're saying is what should be happening, Connie, but
do it. No,
yeah. Let's do it together, Connie. Let's do it together.
So exactly, because it's so simplistic, but it's just let's get there.
Be there for
So the
each
thing
other
is,
as human beings, to be kind and compassionate, because I like to say, we all want to be treated with kindness and compassion.
Yes.
Why not treat other people the same way?
Yeah, but the thing is, what's happened is, and Garrett, you know what? I 150% agree. Yes, the platforms want you on there. They want you on there because cha-ching, right? That's the bottom dog, right?
To make money on ads, and they want you to be fighting because it keeps you on the platform.
Exactly. That's why you have the neurodark. That's why you have the surface users and the deep users and everyone going nuts. So it comes down to them, the profit. I get that. You know what? And that's why when I go on with the AI, I always say, do not butter me up and be blunt.
Yeah.
But I always do that because I know that craziness that happens. But, being a human being and, wanting to be around others it's so simplistic. And the thing is, the platforms know that there's a gap. They know that there's a gap. And to me, I feel they're exploiting this gap.
They are, because what?
So I'm going to call it for what it is. They are. Thank you, Garrett.
The average person spends 2.5 hours a day watching TV, and 2.5 hours a day, I'm doing this from memory, on social media. That's 5 hours a day that we could be actually interacting with other human beings.
Yeah.
Or doing something like this, where at least we're on, a lot of us are
on
video, and we're talking by voice, and we're having real human to human interaction, like live. Like, we need more of this and less of that.
Thank you for this, Garrett. I'm going to chime out, cut down, but I'm so happy. I'm ecstatic. And I'm just so happy that that you found me on Meetup. Thank you.
So thank you.
Well, you ended up somehow there on my feed somehow. Yeah, but
I'm glad we did.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Ozan, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I want to comment on Lily's point. I think it's a good idea for a product. You can create a mate that's gonna, talk to you really good, gonna make you feel great. It's a great product idea, but I don't think it's a great idea to make any machine kind of always trying to be dependent on that relationship-wise, that you need that. Oh, I need to talk to that, and then you completely losing that whatever you're aiming for. That's my point, my idea of it. Because if you have a great AI knows much better wording. I mean, you don't need a friend then. I mean, everybody's gonna look each other like monsters. Oh my God, you're gonna turn into a monster because the way you communicate changes. You're gonna talk to AI with the most raw material, and it's gonna give you the art of it, and then you're gonna be kind of in a relationship that is traumatizing you, in my opinion. I think it should be very direct, and it will become kind of like different, entities of AI. Like when you say computer, do you know computer? I'm like, I give people an idea when I say about different products. Like, do you know solar? Let's say I'm selling solar. You have an idea of solar. There are a ton of different solar, and it doesn't really meet what you're looking into right now. Or computer. Do you know computers? I don't know anything about computers except the one I use it. Barely I know it, the way I use it. That's it. So AI is going to be the same, and it is already at that point, I believe, because I don't know the extent of it. So my idea is, I have also a question. I want to change a little bit the topic. What would be the effect of if they come up with an idea that, hey, you know what? It's going to be for a greater good. What? The religious AI. Like, it's going to be, correction officers AIs. Oh, really? Like, let's say it's a law enforcement AI. It's in your life already. You don't know. And then it will be, oh, Jesus Christ, or the God of AI, somewhat AI, or I don't know, Muslim AI. It's gonna be different versions of AI. How would it be affecting? Do you think it's gonna become like a therapeutic, the way you feel like you will feel good, or it's gonna kind of turn into a spam, or it's gonna be like a virus, like the computer viruses? Do you think it will be something like that in the experience? That's I'm thinking about that. It's very interesting to think of. What is your take on Garrett?
Um, I think we're already, we have like 4 or 5 base AI models ultimately, and in the US, well, in the US and Europe, 4 or 5 base models, but then there are Chinese models as well, and we're already seeing different values from each one of those models. I think what you're talking about, like, could happen. I think that we were talking about hyperlocalization. Part of hyperlocalization, like I believe ChatGPT is actually not available in China because I think they don't want to censor it. Whereas China has a lot of models, and if you ask, and I've done this, you ask a Chinese model about Tiananmen Square, it'll say, oh, it's a place in China. There'll be no mention of the 1980s political incident of Tiananmen Square. They've censored any politically sensitive topics out of the Chinese AIs. So I was originally planning on using one for my ed tech company, and then I kicked the tires and I was like, oh no, I can't put that in an educational technology app. It would have been free for me because they open source it all, because they open source it so that they can censor and get everyone using their sensors. So what you're talking about is already in some respects starting to happen. Um, I don't have a religious AI, but I do have an ethical AI, which I'll share with you guys, which is basically a an it's an ethical decision spot, which basically you can ask it any ethical question. Um, and it will tell you what the ethical thing to do, the ethical way to evaluate any particular situation by applying the 6 intentions of the FTI to that situation. And I would really encourage people to like play around with it and see if you feel like it ever answers something wrong. And if you think it does, tell me what it was that you asked it, and I would love to get feedback on it. I'm hoping that it will help people, to answer questions and to handle situations in a more ethical way.
Very interesting.
Anyone, we have 5 minutes left. Anyone else have other questions? Lubna, any reflections on what we've been talking about so far? Like recently, you've been quiet.
Yeah, lots. The truth is we are absolutely becoming lonelier. But we've been under a lot of conditioning to be individualist society in many ways. What's in it for me always, kind of a mindset which is counterintuitive to human nature. We're communal by nature. Technology, immersive environments, they do create
You can turn on the light, Amelia.
to create alternate spaces to fill the gap. But truth is, we do need to take again a serious look in the mirror, and if we don't shift where we place emphasis and how we measure success or value, we're only going to continue to accelerate our imminent extinction, because this is a planetary system, and worse, we would be just making the experience really bad. At least we should make it fun. Technology is not doing anything other than magnifying what's happening on the inside, but it also gives us an enormous opportunity to take a really good look at ourselves and make that change that we need to make. So it's not in the technology, in ourselves, and it will echo through the tech. So this is actually the greatest and last chance we have at reevaluating who we are and what happiness means. I say it's like I said before, tennis racket, or it's maybe if you like chocolate, it's like instead of fighting each other over the wrapper of the money, it's the container, and let the sweetness of life crumbled under our feet. Maybe this is the time to realize that we are the sweetness, and life is beautiful, and we are on heaven indeed. And it's that we've been conditioned to fear rather than love. And so I'll add to the ethos of the Free Thinkers is the Alternate Living Labs Alliance, and we're similar to Garris's. And that's we're an elective, and we elect to come in a place where it's fun, it's trust is a given, that we are love bases rather than fear bases. We compete to complete rather than beat each other. We are richer together rather than each other, and it becomes really, really simple. Because it is simple, in fact. It's just that we've been divided so that we are conquered, and we are made to be more ignorant. You know, they're even pulling unprecedented number of classic books out of schools, like never before, thousands. So we just need to, I think we have an opportunity while we still have the freedom of, at least the perceived freedom of independent thought. So all these bots, and as they get to know you better, and all those sentiments you leave, when all that is mapped, it's like when you're training the biometrics of your finger, all that data starts to frame you, and it knows you better than you know yourself. So on one hand, we talk about becoming together, where we have each other's back, where we extend each other. I say when we compete to complete, it's like your blue, my red, together, we both can see purple, and without each other, there's never going to, neither one of us could ever enjoy the purples. So thank you, Garrett, for making me this space, and for hosting this space, for holding this safe and loving and beautiful space. I thank you for having me. Thank you for creating it. I'm very grateful.
Thank you for coming and being a part of it as well. I want to let Ozan do one last comment or question. Keep it short if you don't mind, Ozan, because I got to put my kids to bed. It's
Okay,
almost 9 o'clock here, so
I will keep it very short, but it just happened to came to me like, so the way I picture the AI can be very, very amazing. Like we would be enjoying the life as of religiously ideas that we are enjoying the heaven, but then something happened, right? I feel like AI real the history is like repeating itself, everything. So maybe we already created the AI, different form of it. We created an amazing form of godly life form, and we are already hearing that mythologies, right? And at some point, AI said, you know what? They are amazing like this. Let's leave them in their nature. And they just left us. and we have this like huge gap of we don't know how things happen. These huge, amazing structures, but many things devoured by the time. But and then we have this mental, magnetism that we come back to the idea to be very, like true in like value, create a value that we are thinking all around like, hey, we should be fair, we should be nice, we should be everything should be good. And we know there could be something trauma that reminds us that something can be happening, and then because it happened before. So maybe we are coming close to that very fine consciousness level, which is bringing it to us. Everybody has to understand everybody now. When those AI come together, we will be like leveled, and then maybe we create that heaven again, and then somebody gonna bite the apple, boom, we are kicked out of the heaven again.
So I would
it might
argue
happen.
the way that I would interpret like what you're saying is that um, if my argument defending free will is right, we are spiritual beings that have an essence of ourself that is metaphysical, which comes from some metaphysical source. And if that's the case, then we do come from some, higher power, or we're sourced from some higher power. And I think innate in us is the desire to prevent significant unnecessary harm and increase happiness and decrease harm. All I'm doing is writing down the words that really each of us has in our hearts anyway. And I think that's innate in all of us. What I worry about with AI is that I don't think it has that. And that's the part that concerns me. And I love AI for what it is. I'm an AI guy, right? Like it's what I've been doing. I've been building AI algorithms since college. And so I use AI in everything I do. But I think that there are limits to how it should be evolved. And that said, I'll kind of close out with that and say thank you all for joining. I like to say the guests make the party, so you guys are what make these events fun and exciting. And the diversity of opinion is also really important. It's good that we have diverse opinions. That's part of what we need. And when you have diverse opinions, that's where, you let everybody speak politely, and then the best ideas tend to be the ones that people agree with most frequently, when everyone is being polite, and no one's getting emotionally hijacked. So we want to keep an open space for all ideas to be shared politely. And thank you all for being a part of that. And hope everybody has a great night. And hope that we'll have some people joining the FTI as members in the next couple of weeks. So
Thank you, Garrett, as always. Thank you. Thank you.
thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.